Hello everyone, today we're taking a look at the Eagle 2 from WalleFPV. WalleFPV might be a new name. You might recognize their logo. Well, YMZFPV is now WalleFPV, WalleFPV.com. And the Eagle 2 comes in with an 04 Pro at $430. And if you're in the US, you might be aware that getting an 04 or 04 Pro, as we have in this one, gotten really difficult to come by. Some are saying stock should be coming back later this month, July or next month, but who really knows? So if you're interested in this particular quad, there'll be a link down in the video description, and I would suggest just getting it with the 04 Pro, unless you have one on hand, of course, or you're willing to wait until 04 Pros become available again. Well, I have the Express LRS receiver. You can get it with a TBS Nano receiver, and you can also get this with a GPS module, an M10 Nano GPS module, if that's the sort of thing that you want. The flight controller down here, as you can see the USB port right here, they have two different potential ESC flight controller all-in-ones listed, an F411 which is 20 amp and an F405 which is 40 amp. So I'm not certain what is in this one. I didn't notice anything in the box that told me one way or another. The motors are 1002 and they are 14,000 kV, and on those motors are 35 millimeter tri-bladed props. We do have a 470 microfarad capacitor right here on the ESC power connector. Got a metal mount for our two micro antennas that do come with the kit. Through holes in our uprights in order to mount a T-style bracket with a couple little spacers to keep it centered. A 3D print to hold our batteries. We have motor wire tape here, which is my favorite tape. When we pretty much see that whenever we see motor wire tape, and that's my favorite. It holds our motor wires down, keeps them out of the props. In the box we get an extra set of gem fan props, two little screwdrivers, screws for our 04 camera mount, obviously I use my own, an extra battery holder, more spare screws. We get another bracket for our 04 antennas. That's it, no stickers. Technically this is a sticker, but it's more just about information delivery. Do note motor direction is reversed, and do not modify the factory firmware and PID. Another information delivery device here. We got an Eagle 2 is factory limited to 80% power. If you want to release all the power, you can change the power output limit to 100% on the PID tuning page. There are risks in removing the limit, which may wash the propellers, which I think they mean the propellers would come off and shorten the flight time. This part is going to come up again later in the video. It weighs 72.6 grams. The recommended battery is a 380 milliamp 3S battery, and with that battery I see it weighs 103.64 grams. I did find that this Tattoo 450 milliamp 3S battery does fit the battery holder quite well as well, and it weighs 112.82 grams. The bottom carbon fiber plate looks to be a little over 2 millimeters thick. The arms look to be 6 millimeters wide, and motor post to motor post I'm getting about 90 millimeters. We're going to start off with our slow flat flying, and I'm just popping into the camera settings to show you that rock steady is turned on. This flight will transition from the DVR footage into the rock steady footage at about 1:30, so we'll get to see how steady the flight is with the stock camera. You know, no rock steady, we get that through the DVR, there's no stabilization there, and then we'll get to transition over to the rock steady gyro stabilized. Of course, you do have the option of passing this through other stabilization applications like gyro flow or anything else that you might use to enhance the stability if you find it is not stable enough for your particular needs, or you just have a flight where it's particularly windy. Of course, micros are always sensitive to wind, and as you can probably tell, there isn't much wind on this particular flight. I was fortunate where I caught several evenings where the wind had calmed down. It had come down from winds in the teens and the miles per hour down to the single digits. This particular flight at this particular time, 7 miles per hour on the wind. So quite steady. Of course, that's an official measurement. That is not the measurement from the backyard. I have heard many people talking about me getting a method or a digital measurement tool for measuring the wind in the backyard. I'm hesitant against that because it's just one more thing I have to remember to do each time, versus I could take the DVR footage, look at the timestamps on it, and then I can look at the weather reports for that data. So that makes it a little bit easier for me post. But I do hear those concerns, and they are valid, that, you know, I could get a better weather measurement by actually measuring it in the backyard. But I think I also would have to move around the yard, because, you know, up near the house it might be a different measurement than it is out near the fence, and then how do we gauge what's over the house, because I'm not getting up there to measure that. We've transitioned over into the gyro stabilized or rock steady footage. A little special nugget, I guess, during this time. This is kind of that period of time where a lot of natural viewers kind of fall off as far as timeline goes. On Friday, I hope to have a fairly interesting whoop video. It's actually 2 whoops. Probably fairly unexpected by a good portion of the market. And I have also been reminded by my loving wife that the shelves where I store quads post-review kind of full and needs to be thinned out, so we'll be looking at doing another giveaway coming up, so stay tuned for those sorts of things. I haven't really picked out the quads, of course. I need to do that yet. I usually try to spread around different video systems, something there for everyone, so you don't have to have every video system get left out in the cold or something along those lines, that there's just nothing in the giveaway that you could potentially fly. So that will be coming up as well. It'll give me about a week or so to get organized on that front. I do think that this quad should be, in my opinion, it should be heavily considered a cruiser. A flat flyer, yes, you can fly faster than this and it will be fine. I wouldn't expect to go hard with this. I think 1002 motors at 14,000 kV at this weight is really pushing the upper limits on, you know, having 3S power behind it. And we'll get to why I feel this way in just a moment, but that's an awful lot of weight on a really small prop, and I'm concerned that if we try to think of this as more freestyle or racing style, more aggressive style flyer, that we might be disappointed in the longevity. You know, it doesn't have thick carbon fiber, and with an 04, it's pretty weighty, and they tout this as the smallest 04 Pro micro drone on the market. I don't doubt that. I can't say definitively one way or another whether that's 100% accurate or not. Of course, people can build stuff and make things smaller and smaller and smaller. I think, you know, they might be more accurate if we're just looking at the bind and fly market, you know, quads that are manufactured by companies. We switched back to the DVR footage so that you can see like the throttle position, the flight time, the battery, how it's doing, stuff like that. I did the flight time or the flat flying cruising across, in this particular case, across 3 380 batteries and 4 450s. Now my Tattoo 450s are fairly old, several years old, maybe 4, 5, 6 years old. So you may find you get even more flight time, but the flight time with the Tattoo 450 is going to come in right around 5 minutes, which we'll see in this flight, and where we'll see where the 380, well, we won't see it because it's redundant. My battery testing for the 380 was at 415, so about 45 seconds more with flying that 450 milliamp Tattoo battery. And there could be other batteries on the market that fit. And you can do other things to make your batteries fit, whether it is to not use the built-in battery holder or the 3D print battery holder and go with a strap. You can print your own 3D battery holder to you know, if you have those skills, in order to use the batteries you have on hand. Of course, I've got lots and lots of batteries for all the different micros that I fly, but those were the only two that felt secure. You can use tape to, you know, increase the size of your battery to fit better, or foam if you want to do it that way. But we've come in for the end of the flight here, 5:04 on the flight time, and our battery voltage is climbing now that we've disarmed above 3.5 volts per cell. So we're in good shape there. Let's move into faster flight, and this won't last long, unfortunately. So keep your eyes peeled. And this is the very first faster flight attempt that I had on this particular quad, and it is on the 380, I believe. And it's only going to be about 30 seconds. You can see it's my first attempt because I'm kind of wobbling all over the place. That's why I fly these things a lot, because I don't feel I could give a fair shot to any one quad if I were only fly at a time or two. It takes me a couple of packs just to kind of get comfortable and familiar, but oh yeah, crashed right away. Look at the lower left-hand corner. You might have missed it. I'm going to try to turtle mode. Oh, did you see in the lower left-hand corner? Let's take a look at that in some high definition. Okay, here we go, up over the bush after wobbling around a little bit. We're going to come around, and then we're going to kind of hit it a little bit over this tree, and I'm not going to recover very well after this power loop. And whoops, yep, oh, dray straight into the ground. Now you can see it a little bit better in the lower left-hand corner. I did not see that in the goggle. Hence, that's why I turned on turtle mode and tried again. And I thought I saw it on the second time around, so yeah, that's no good. So this is the motor that smoked, and it no longer spins or rotates. The motors, you know, when you get smoke off of that, I presume it came off the motor because I did bring it back over to the table. I rearmed it, and this motor just kind of, it stuttered a touch, but then it didn't do anything anymore. So this motor is dead. I am concerned, and the reason why I consider this strictly a cruiser is the other motors were awful hot, and that wasn't a very long flight. Now, it is hot out. What'd I say? It was 91 degrees, so it's in the 90s at the least, and you're carrying a lot of weight, as I said, and you're running 3S voltage, and I never got up to 100% throttle, and the motors were really warm to where when I walked it back after going and getting it, when I walked back, so the motors hadn't been running for some period of time, a short period, I touched the other motors and they were hot to where you wouldn't want to keep your fingers on it. Oftentimes, historically, for some of us that have been around for a while, you'd say, well, your PID tune is off or something like that. I can't say the PID tune is off. When it was flat flying, it was flying nice and stable and smooth, which is what I think it does a good job at. It gives you that extra flight time carrying that third cell. Instead of just going 2S, you can get out of a really small platform, you can get some extra cruising time. This was the camera angle I was using when I was doing that attempt at faster flying. I was much lower than that, obviously, when I was doing my cruising battery flight time. If you're outside of the US and you can get 04s quite easily and you want this, or really any quad that doesn't come with an 04, my process, this was my 04, so I put it in there. I thought this was a little bit tedious to get it in there, which isn't necessarily unusual in micros. You know, you've got big components here going into a really small package, and so I had to pretty much take off everything from the carbon fiber up, and then kind of you secure it. If you could tell, there's this plate, see this X? That plate secures up into this aluminum top piece. So I secured the 04 to that bracket, and then I put it in the unit with the 04, and then I had to kind of hold my antenna pieces while I was getting things back aligned so I could then screw these two screws back in. So it was fairly tedious to get in there. It wasn't the most frustrating thing. But again, if you're in the US and you're looking at this, I would just order it with the 04 Pro if you've got the money. You know, obviously, if you have an 04 Pro in hand that you're targeting for this, that's a different sort of market, so to speak. But if you're waiting to get an 04 and this, just get it with the 04, because really, do we know when we're going to get 04 Pro stock back in the US? And if we do, will it go so fast that we'll all get what we need? It's two different choices there. Unfortunately, because of my limited flight time after burning that motor, well, I didn't get any flight time after burning that motor, but because of my limited flight time, I can't really comment about the overall durability. We can tell, obviously, with our 04 that there isn't any camera protection outside of what's built into the 04. So this isn't going to provide us any additional camera protection, and therefore, really, we probably could have had this be a bit different design to maybe save a little bit of weight. Probably wouldn't have saved us as much as maybe a gram or a gram and a half tops, but still, it's a little bit of weight savings that would increase the flight time, both in cruisy, flat flying, and more aggressive if you decide to take that on. But I'm concerned about flying this one aggressively like I would. Obviously, that is based upon my experience crashing, and you know, even before I used turtle mode, that motor emitted that smoke, and then when I turned on turtle mode, it emitted more smoke, and then now it doesn't seize up at all. It might smoke again for me, but it's not going to rotate anymore. So, you know, be cautious about what you plan to do with super small motors in a super small but yet fairly weighty platform for something like this, whether it's this one or a build you're taking on or something separate altogether. It's, you know, you're really pushing the motors. I think 1103, which is going to increase the weight even more, would probably be more. 3S, safe, as well as higher KV, you know, 14,000 KV. That's fairly high KV, considering all the flight factors. I do think if you do get one, you should secure this battery lead down to this back part of the carbon fiber because it goes straight to our battery pads. And I say this all the time, but, you know, you have a battery ejection, the battery goes flying out this way, and it tugs on this. The only thing it's stopping this whole thing from coming apart is possibly some friction resistance on the carbon fiber. And so I would zip tie this down, you know, just run it kind of crosswise across through there to give it a fighting chance that it won't tug directly on our ESC pads off the all-in-one flight controller, because if we pull it off with the pad, it's likely, you know, done. You're buying a new $100 flight controller if that happens. And so, you know, a 2 penny A zip tie can save us a lot of cost and frustration. Obviously, the one last kind of detail I draw out is obviously they haven't drilled through these, and I think that's a pretty interesting idea, that we don't see the motor stem come all the way through the bottom. That leaves more carbon fiber between all the little different screw holes. Obviously, I had one crash and I didn't have any physical damage to the frame or any of those components. It just, I smoked the motor. But that was another thing with really small motors and really small screws. If you do happen to wang them, that sometimes you can tear it through the carbon fiber or damage the carbon fiber around where the holes are, but with it filled in, it's got a little bit of material to keep that all solid. For my own peace of mind, I gotta say it one more time. I think of this as a flat flyer cruiser. I don't think of it as aggressive freestyle or racing sort of quad. Can you get away with it? Probably, maybe. I certainly wouldn't recommend anyone take off that 80% throttle limit. As hot as the motors were, especially if you're flying at your throttle high up and no 80% limit on that, that seems awful dangerous. But look around on YouTube. I think not only Stu over at UAV Futures has taken a look at this, but probably others as well. See how they're flying it. Have they crashed it? Has it lived through the crashes? You know, do your due diligence as you might with any quad. Again, if you're interested in the Eagle 2 from WalleFPV, which used to be YMZFPV, I'll have a link down in the video description. The price with an 04 is $430, and then it comes down from there, so you can go to that website if you want to check it out. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise about the Eagle 2 from WalleFPV, please let me know in the comment section below. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.